A Course in Miracles, the notes of Helen Schuckman. The pleasure which is derived as such is reliable. That's what I'm reading from ACIM. Only because it stems from an error which men shared. Awareness of the error produces the guilt. Denial of the error results in projection. Correction of the error brings release. This is definitely in Robert Perry's CE book, A Course in Miracles. Um, uh, I suppose what it's saying there is error can be shared from an everyman standpoint. Like if everyone is doing the wrong thing, um, then there's a sort of um, ability to live in that if everyone is doing the wrong thing. So the pleasure which is derived as such is reliable only because it stems from an error which men shared. Um, for me, ACIM says the Holy Spirit looks only to the truth in my mind in terms of everything. There's a real truth. Two, physical behavior, spiritual beliefs, anything. There is a real truth. There is a real falsehood. ACIM in the manual, I believe, says something like the mind can be right or wrong. So um, the Holy Spirit looks to what is the actual truth about any subject in my mind, and that's all it identifies with. And then that's all the Holy Spirit extends outward with to others. So same for me. The only thing I should extend outward to others is that which is the actual truth about any subject, anything people do um, or believe. So awareness of the error. So reading from ACIM, awareness of the error produces the guilt. Denial of the error results in projection. Correction of the error brings release. So if I'm aware of something, which um, so if I do something that's not the perfect will of God in terms of physical behavior or a belief or anything, if I think, say, or do anything that's not the perfect will of God, then I'm going to feel guilty. I'm going to feel remorse, disappointment, sorrow. Um, so awareness of actually doing something that is not the will of God produces those emotions. Denial of the error results in projection. So if I want to blame somebody else for whatever it is in whatever way, that would be projection. Um, Certainly, I think there was a sentence, something about denial of the error results in depression. That was an earlier sentence. And so if I want to do something that I know is not the perfect will of God, but I want to do it, but I don't do it, I would have feelings of depression, or anyone would have feelings of depression. Correction of the error brings release. So if I understand the proper way to go about anything, physical, mental, emotional, behavior, anything, if I understand how to go about it in the will of God, as God designed it, I would say. I do not believe that is a expression or sentence in the book, as God designed it, but it applies. It's a truth. So God, God the Father, the first person of the Trinity, is is the designer for everything in a certain sense. He might not be the personal creator of everything, but he is the creator above all other creators. Correction of the error brings release. So if I live correctly in terms of whatever the physical behavior is, or the thought, or anything, if I just simply understand the real truth, then there is release, meaning perfect peace, perfect joy, perfect strength, perfect love, perfect goodness. Um, um, uh, so continuing on here with ACIM. So here's a sentence in the book. The only valid use of sex is procreation. It is not truly pleasurable in itself. Lead us not into temptation means do not let us deceive ourselves into believing that we can relate in peace to God or our brothers with anything external. Definitely in Robert Perry's CE book, And that is the statement about physical behavior in terms of physical behavior. Uh, I mean, it's being very clear here. You know, the only valid use of sex is procreation. There is no other valid use, period. That's what the book is saying. Uh, there's nothing else about it, really. Um, Anything other than the focus being creating a child, creating a baby, any other focus of any kind, anything else about it is not pleasurable. In if I really understand the act of sex itself, if I really understand it, if I really understand the act itself, then nothing is pleasurable about it except creating a child. That's it. Um, so do not deceive. So ACIM, do not deceive ourselves into believing that we can relate in peace with anything external. So everything is about the mind, the spirit, the emotions. Judge how well you're doing by how you feel is a sentence in this book about, am I supremely happy, perfect peace, perfect joy? Yes or no? If yes, I'm in the will of God. If no, I'm not. So it's all about the mind, the spirit, things of that nature. It's never about the form, anything physical. It's never about the form. The form simply follows through with what the mental intention is. Um, the form itself is neutral. Plenty of sentences in the book about the body should feel neutral in every way, um, whether that's physical health or anything else. The body should feel completely neutral at all times. And my view, or your view, or anyone's view of everyone else in terms of their body should be 100% neutrality in terms of the emotions. Dictionary definition of feeling neutral towards other bodies. So, reading from ACIM, the sin of Onan was called a sin because it involved a related type of self delusion, namely, that pleasure without relating can exist. So, um, the only relating that is going on in terms of sex is creating a new being, creating a body, so that that body can be born and a soul can enter that body and be a child of God, starting out on that person's journey in terms of God's plan. Um, um, ACIM, reading from the Notes of Helen Schuckman, ACIM. To repeat an earlier instruction, the concept of either the self or another as an object epitomizes this strange reversal. So, all right, as I'm reading here, ACIM, as Bill put it, and very correctly too, it is objectionable, but only because it is invalid. Upside down logic produces this kind of thinking. All of this is in Robert Perry's CE book. Maybe not every sentence here, but by and large it is. So obviously, to see someone as a object, a sex object in any way, shape, or form is obviously wrong, incorrect. Beauty is all about the relation of minds, the symmetry of love and goodness in terms of the mind with other people. That's what beauty is about, not physical beauty. The Urantia book, Urantia. The Urantia book gets more into that fact, idea, truth about what beauty is. It's about the symmetry of minds in terms of relationships. It's not about sexual attraction. So, um, I mean, there's a lot of sentences in this book about the body and not being a body, but the body, can be a healthy, serviceable instrument, and is only used for useful purposes. There's a lot of sentences in the book about all this. Um, so to think otherwise in ACIM here is upside down thinking. So any ego thinking of any kind, anything that's not Perfect peace, perfect joy, perfect strength, perfect love, perfect goodness, and zero negative emotions of any kind. No feelings of deprivation, no feelings of grievances, no resentments, no remorse, disappointment, sorrow, etc., etc. All of that is upside down thinking, right side up thinking. The book does not actually ever say right side up, but the opposite of upside down is right side up, and right side up thinking is the God mind or the Jesus like mind, where every thought, word, and action is always filled with nothing but perfect joy, perfect peace, perfect strength, perfect goodness. So anything that's of the ego mind is invalid. Anything of the God mind is valid. Dictionary definition of what valid and invalid are. The ego has its own sense of logic, I suppose. There are definitely sentences in the book talking about that idea. It's a topic. So, reading from the notes of Helen Schuckman, ACIM, child of God, you were created to create the good, the beautiful, and the holy. That's actually a sentence in The Way of Mastery. The Way of Mastery is another great book, has the same ideas as A Course in Miracles, puts those ideas in more plain language. ACIM is more of a poetic type style. Um, that's what I would say about it. So, reading from ACIM, do not lose sight of this. You were right in telling Bill to invite me to enter anywhere temptation arises. I will change the situation from one of inappropriate attraction to one of impersonal miracle working. The concept of changing the channel for libidinal expression was Freud's greatest contribution, except that he did not understand what channel really means. So, I mean, the Urantia book uses the phrase truth, beauty, and goodness. The Urantia book will combine up those three words, ideas, in many senses. You know, truth, beauty, and goodness. Beauty, again, about symmetry of minds, not about sexual attraction or physical attraction in any way. Um, so, truth, beauty, and goodness. Or in here I'm reading, you were, child of God. You were created to create the good, the beautiful, and the holy. So, holy, sanctity to God, good, of God, child of God. So ACIM is very clear that we are created by God. We are not simultaneously creating God, nor is the Buddhist idea or the non-dualist idea that every being makes up God. God's not an actual being. God is the sum total of all beings. No, the ACM is very clear. Um, Humans, angels, others, we are created by God. That's a big story explanation. A lot of it, a lot of the truth there is explained in the Urantia book. Um, uh, but as far as being a human being, we are created to create only the good, the beautiful, symmetry of relationships, minds, peace, joy, love, goodness. That's what beautiful is. And the holy, sanctity to God, sanctity to the will of God. Do not lose sight of this. Uh, so ask Jesus to enter in wherever temptation arises, is what the book is saying here. Or just ask Spirit to enter in, Holy Spirit to enter in, God Himself to enter in. It's all the same idea. Live by how Spirit wants me to live. So anyone should be living by how Spirit, God Himself, the Spirit of God, the communication link, the thought adjuster, and the Urantia book, as far as those terms are concerned, live according to the will of God as someone enjoys and appreciates and understands that idea of living in the will of God. So whether it's Jesus or anyone else that anyone feels comfortable with, live that idea. So invite Spirit in wherever temptation arises. So if I'm in doubt about anything, that means I'm in temptation, I'm in confusion, The God mind of peace, joy, and strength is always 100% certain every moment, moment to moment, without exception. So anything that's not perfect certainty is temptation. Call it doubt, call it confusion, call it anxiety, call it deciding upon choices, call it any of those ideas, but they're all the same. They're all the same idea. They're all the same thing as temptation. So um, I mean, there's a lot of sentences in this book about temptation. So ask Holy Spirit what to do in the next moment. I know in the Urantia book it says Jesus's favorite prayer was "Not my will, but yours be done." When Jesus himself was in a moment of temptation about what to do, especially even during his public mission, prior to his public mission, and during his public mission. The Urantia book says that Jesus would have moments, times where he would have to say to himself in a prayerful fashion, "Not my will, but yours be done." So then going to the will of God instead of my will, separate from the will of God, or anyone's will separate from the will of God. Reading from the notes of Helen Schuckman, I will change the situation from one of inappropriate attraction to one of impersonal miracle working. So Spirit, Jesus, Spirit, God will change the situation from one of inappropriate attraction. And again, um, the only attraction in terms of sex is that sex is only to have a child. That's it. There's nothing else about it ever, moment to moment. So anything other than wanting to create a child, including fantasies of any kind that are not about wanting to create a child, are inappropriate. So all these inappropriate thoughts, feelings can be changed into impersonal miracle working. So impersonal miracle working, not for any one person in particular, but joy, peace, and strength that is simply offered um, to whomever and all. So an individual might receive the benefits of impersonal miracle working, but impersonal says that the person doing the miracle working is not doing it directly for that person. They're doing it for all in that sense, that it's impersonal miracle working. And impersonal miracle working would it be anything that's filled with joy, peace, strength, goodness, love. Certainly Jesus did do actual physical miracles in his public ministry, um, uh, but you know, the miracles that he did for individuals, it was more of an impersonal sense that he was doing it for everyone. The concept of changing the channel from libidinal expression was Freud's greatest contribution. Reading from the notes of Helen Schuckman, ACIM. Uh, so, be a channel for God. Live perfectly. Live as Jesus did in his public mission. Live as Jesus did. No conflicts of thought, perfect certainty, no feelings of deprivation, perfect joy, perfect peace, perfect strength. ACIM talks quite a lot about God himself will take the final step in terms of someone's real enlightenment. That would be Jesus at his baptism. Gautama Siddhartha Buddha also achieved what real enlightenment is in terms of a spectacular moment where God himself comes in because that person has no more ego mind there. That person has withdrawn all the ego energy from all the ego beliefs. So there's nothing present but the God beliefs that that person, nothing's present but the God beliefs for that person. And so then God himself can step in because there's no ego mind and he can reinforce that God mind, make it stronger, make it bigger, make it more whole, make it more just stronger and better in every way in terms of joy, peace, strength, love, goodness. Um, the ACIM says the great rays of God come in and hold that person securely. So that's Jesus at his baptism, where major energy came in, where it was real easy to live perfectly um, because of the energy of God himself added to the human mind. The love. So reading from the notes of Helen Schuckman, ACIM, the love of God for a little while must still be expressed through one body to another. This is because the real vision is still so dim. Everyone can use his body best by enlarging man's perception, so he can see the real capital V vision. This vision is invisible to the physical eye. The ultimate purpose of the body is to render itself unnecessary. Learning to do this is the only real reason for its creation. So that's all definitely in Robert Perry's CE book. So the ego does give, acknowledges, the ego and the ego problem in terms of where someone is at, in terms of them being in ego mentality versus the God mentality. Um, so anything less than perfect Jesus-like enlightenment um, means someone is still, living with incorrect body mentality. So, but the goal is real capital V vision. So, uh, as far as using your body best, there's quite a few sentences in the book about it. I know one of them is about um, you can use your body best. I'm paraphrasing, but you can use your body best by teaching other people that they are not bodies. That's a sentence in this book. Um, so, uh, capital V vision, however Jesus thought, felt, and experienced life in his public mission. That's the real goal for everyone and anyone. And this capital V vision is invisible to the physical eye. So ACIM talks a lot about what real enlightenment is. Again, Jesus, Gautama Siddhartha Buddha, who experienced what real enlightenment is. One of the sentences I remember, something about uh, when you begin to see edges of light around the same familiar objects that you have been usually seeing, you're starting to approach what real vision is. And there are many other sentences about it. But uh, Jesus in his public mission, the God mind, the real enlightenment mind, is simply something completely different than this average mind that we have. It's completely different, and there's a lot of sentences in the book about that. So um, it's hard to understand what that completely different way of thinking is, living in the ordinary mind, but still, the enlightened mind is something completely different than what this ordinary mindal mental experience is. So this sentence is about, the ultimate purpose of the body is to render itself unnecessary. So what I want to do is render the body unnecessary. So similar to Eastern philosophy, in terms of the idea that, a man and a woman get married, they have a child or two, and then they stop having sex and they meditate and they attempt to grow tremendously spiritually. That's life. That's what actual life is to live that way. So um, the ultimate purpose of the body as a human being, walking the earth plane as a human being in body form on earth, the ultimate purpose of the body in terms of living this life is to eventually render itself unnecessary. So the only need, um, is in terms of sex is to have a child. That's the only need. So a child or two, and then render the body unnecessary, no more sexual relations, and grow spiritually. That is the idea. So learning to do this is the only real reason for the body's creation. So that's ACIM. Reading from the notes of Helen Schuckman, ACIM. So here comes some very personal stuff to Helen. This is not channeled material. Um, I'm reading from the notes of Helen Schuckman, but I'm still not sure. I need your help about this. I went on anyway. Scribal errors to enter too much into the course. I hadn't intended to write a commentary. It just occurred to me that the doubt may come from something I don't want to give up. Should I tell you about it? I just remember the one more river. So none of that is in the book. That is not channeled material. Um, so, reading from the Notes of Helen Schuckman, ACIM, note scribes have a particular role in the plan of atonement because they have the ability to experience revelation themselves and also to put into words enough of the experience to serve as a basis for miracles. Uh, well, we certainly do need scribes to write down this type of information. Um, and like myself, I mean, the sentence in the book, I mean, you say out loud what your truth is in order to strengthen it in yourself and believe it stronger and more fully. That's why we say these ideas out loud. That is the goal, to gain my own spiritual growth. Um, uh, so it's all about someone who's interested in this type of material, whether they're writing it down, speaking it out loud, in groups involved with it. Uh, the ability to experience revelation themselves, learn and study. There's a sentence in this book about, all learning requires attention. This is about learning and studying this particular material in terms of understanding it. So it's all about growth, our own personal growth uh, and the growth of others. Experiencing revelation, perfect joy, peace, strength, goodness with every thought, word, and action, every moment, moment to moment. And also, so reading from ACIM, and also to put into words enough of the experience to serve as a basis for miracles. So writing things down that are positive in terms of good spiritual ideas as the basis for miracles. Miracles, joy, peace, strength, goodness, moment to moment, in every way. Reading from ACIM, this is why you experienced that revelation about. I will do, in quotes, very personally, but also wrote it. What you wrote can be useful to miracle workers other than yourself. We said before that prayer is the medium of miracles. The miracle is what you wrote, not the if you will tell me what to do, I will to do it. This prayer is the door that leads out of the desert forever. I believe this is in ACIM, the CE version, Robert Perry's book. Maybe not all of it, maybe not verbatim. Certainly the goal is, everything is about relationships. ACIM, everything is about relationships. Nothing is about yourself. There is zero selfishness. There are definitely sentences in the book about that. Everything is about meaning and purpose, relating in terms of the perfect will of God in every way, in terms of what relating is. Joy, peace, strength, goodness, absolutely nothing else. Present, ever, moment to moment. So prayer is the medium of miracles. The miracle prayer is what you wrote. Everything is about the will. I mean, you, or anyone has to will to do anything in terms of spiritual growth or the opposite of spiritual growth. So the goal is to leave the desert forever. Certainly the desert is ego mentality and all the, I'll say, creative ways that the ego can try to do something different, but it's still not correct. Whatever's going, whatever the ego's doing in terms of a physical behavior or spiritual belief, it's not correct in any way, and there's no reason to try it differently to see if I can feel good about it. That would be the idea. There are sentences in the book about that idea subject. Reading from the notes of Helen Schuckman, ACIM. This is not a complete statement because it does not exclude the negative. We have already told you to add and not to do those you would not have me do in connection with miracles. The distinction has also been made here between miracle-mindedness as a state and miracle-doing as its expression. Miracle-mindedness. Right-mindedness is talked about in this book versus wrong-mindedness. For me, it's the same thing as saying the mind can be right or wrong about anything. There's a right way to go about absolutely everything, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritual beliefs, all of it. And there's a wrong way. The right way is filled with joy, peace, and strength. The wrong way is filled with a negative emotion to whatever degree. So miracle-mindedness, a state of peace, joy, strength, the ability to observe, wait, be patient. There's a sentence in the book that says, um, um, only infinite patience brings immediate effects. So it's about practicing the patience of God, infinite patience, and that brings immediate effects if I live that truth in terms of observing before action. So a miracle-mindedness state, and then miracle doing as its expression in terms of bringing anything that's of joy, peace, and strength to the moment. Reading from the notes of Helen Schuckman, ACIM. The former needs your careful protection because it is a state of miracle readiness. This is what the Bible means in the many references to hold yourself ready and other similar injunctions. So miracle-mindedness needs your protection in the sense of be vigilant for God and his kingdom. So ACIM, quite a number of sentences about I do not have to be vigilant about what the truth is. I need to be vigilant about not allowing ego beliefs, thoughts into my mind, or not giving energy to ego beliefs, thoughts. Like withdraw the energy from ego beliefs, thoughts. Literally withdraw the energy from ego beliefs, thoughts. The truth is already there in its wholeness, but all the ego mentality has to be undone in order to be fully aware and knowing and living in the perfect God mind, the Jesus-like mind. So, ACIM, readiness here means keep your perception right side up. Okay, the expression right side up is in this book. Or valid, right side up, or valid. So you will always be ready, willing, and able. These are the essentials for listen, learn, and do. You must be ready to listen, willing to learn, and able to do. So that's definitely, I'm pretty sure, all of that, probably verbatim, pretty much, is in Robert Perry's CE book. Maybe not in the FIP. Maybe some of it is in the FIP. So life is about always being focused and in attention and in love, goodness, service, peace, joy towards everyone in every way, in every moment, moment to moment, even during sleep, even during meditation, at all times. 100% present, I would say. So ready to listen, always listening to the will of God, willing to learn. Everything is about free will. So if there's any resistance to what the real truth is, it will not come to me. The Holy Spirit will not force the real truth onto anyone. Free will, if there's the slightest resistance to what real truth is, I will not be able to believe it, listen to it, or understand it, because there is resistance to what the real truth is. And Spirit will not intrude at all upon the slightest unwillingness to live, know, and learn what is the actual truth. And this is all about learning. Quite a few sentences in this book about learning means change. Yeah, it's about learning. It is so, um, and able to do. So learn and then be able to do. Um, there's plenty of sentences in the book about this topic. Something like knowing the right thing is not mastery, but but being able to truly live in, mentally understand the right thing, and then being able to do it is mastery. I'm paraphrasing somewhat badly some sense in the book about that, but there are sentences in the book about it. Only the last is involuntary because it is the application of miracles which must be Christ controlled. So when someone has achieved Jesus-like enlightenment, Jesus in his public mission, Jesus after his baptism, then the readiness and the willingness have been fulfilled completely. The ideas about everything are correct in terms of physical behavior, spiritual beliefs, all of it. The ideas are correct, the feelings are correct, the emotions are correct, the strength is there, peace is there, joy is there for everything in every way, moment to moment. So then doing becomes automatic. There's sentences in the book. The Holy Spirit is doing it for you, is a sentence in this book, in the sense that someone who has achieved the level of mind where they're living Jesus like in terms of strength, joy, peace, in terms of their beliefs and their willingness, then the doing is very easy because it's coming from God Himself in that sense. God is running that person. God is living through that person. That's the real Jesus. That's Jesus. That's what everyone's goal is. So only the last, being able to do, is involuntary. As far as being ready to listen and willing to learn, that is up to the individual to fulfill to perfection. But the other two, with reading from ACIM, the Notes of Alan Chuckman, but the other two, which are the voluntary aspects of miracle mindedness, are up to you. Right. The human has to decide to be ready to listen to what the real will of God is in terms of real, strong joy, peace, strength, goodness, absolutely no variance to that whatsoever, every moment, moment to moment, and willing to learn what the real truth is. And that's all very, very, very voluntary, very, very free will. Any interference at all, and the ideas will not be believed in or lived